Hello and welcome to this month's book review. This month we're reading John McComas' The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. This is one book that, for me as a person, it's a book to come back to again and again and again and again, because of how practical it is, how relevant it is, how timely and timeless at the same time that it is. So definitely a book worth reading. I'll be covering the part one and part two of the book in this particular review. So part one is about the problem and part two is about the solution. The final part gives us what that solution can look like in practical terms. And of course, since this is just a book review, I'm choosing to do a video sharing the screens, glancing through the book, and through some highlights so that I could just zoom in on the parts that I want to talk about. Obviously, we can't possibly cover everything. So the book is talking about a particular problem, and I like how the author is very narrative, especially in this introductory part, talking about a lesson that his mentor, whom is not his mentor, learned from his own mentor, in a manner of speaking. So there was this conversation where the author's mentor, whose name is John Ortberg, was asking his own mentor, who is Dan Willard, about a particular situation that was going on in his life at the time, in life and ministry. So he calls up Willard and asks, "What do I need to do to become the me that I want to be?" And then he says, Dan Willard was very silent for a while, and then he gives him his short answer: you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And that's where the title for the book came from, this whole idea of eliminating hurry from your life. I don't know what comes to your mind when you hear such a title for a book: The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. You want to eliminate hurrying out of your life. But I think the statement that actually captures what I think the author was getting at is when he quotes Corrie ten Boom, who said, "If the devil can't make you sane, he'll make you busy." I think that statement in a nutshell, I can relate with it. I think many Christians will be able to relate with it. Whereby, indeed, of course, you know how that everybody's busy. Someone asks you, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine. It's just I've been busy." I find myself typing many messages these days in response to messages that I've missed on WhatsApp or whatever for days. And then I'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry that I find myself starting most messages. I'm sorry for just reading this. Or I'm sorry for just getting to see this." Why is it that I'm just getting to see that message? Because I've been busy. And the problem is not necessarily that, we're busy. The problem is the fact that, when we have, okay, to put it the way the author puts it, says the problem is not when you have a lot to do, it's when you have too much to do, that the only way to keep the quota up is to hurry. We feel like we want to make an impact, we want to make a difference in people's life and things like that. And it keeps driving us to do more, do more, do more. And it was a while ago when I first heard someone say, there's a reason why God made us human beings and not human doings. In other words, there is always an emphasis on being present, being someone, rather than doing and doing and doing. I want to get the next, resource out. I want to do this. I want to do that. We just have too many things going on, really, in our various lives, various circumstances. And life today has taught us that speed is good, fast is good. The faster the computer, the faster the car, the faster the internet connectivity, the better. We are in that we live in a culture bubble where slow is demeaned, slow is mocked, slow is laughed at. And this author is trying to get us back to this point where we can actually see that the rhythm of life in the kingdom is unhurried. The kind of life we're called to live righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Ghost. That's the kingdom of God, Bible says. And there is no way to talk about joy and peace, or even about love, the chief of all the fruits of the Spirit. There is no way you can talk about any of those key virtues, hallmarks of the kingdom, and talk about them, linking them with hurrying. There are things that take time. It takes time to love. In fact, the very first index of love that Apostle Paul talks about is love is patience. It suffers long, takes a long time to boil. And then, of course, same thing with joy, same thing with peace. They are ever so compatible with anything but hurrying. It's not soft. They are not stuffs that you get by hurrying. They are stuffs you get by being present and by being able to enjoy the moment. So the need of the hour, the author says, is for a slow down spirituality. And that's what this book is about. So the problem is we are in this drive to do more. All of us we work more today than an average person works 50 years ago. Even in the Western world, as it were, things are just, going at a pace that we are playing catch up with. But rather than wanting to play catch up, how about we play being a student of Jesus? Because as the author will go on to then describe, we would see that one thing you can definitely associate with Jesus is that he was never in a hurry. In his incarnate self, he was never in a hurry. And here is someone that is always often being interrupted, and yet he was never in a hurry. And so the more we look into the manifestations of this hurried life, the more we'll come to the conclusion that something is deeply wrong. But because it's become the norm for the majority of people, the people that are getting it right in the sense of living an unhurried life now seem to many of us onlookers as this person is weird. In this internet age, you're still like this. You're like living an analog life in a digital world. But really, is that the case? And if you're still like, I don't think this is for me, I don't think I'm that busy, I don't think, I think I've got it all sorted, then check out these few symptoms of what the author calls hurry sickness. And if it's true for you, perhaps it will help you make a better diagnosis. First is irritability, when you easily get mad and frustrated by just little things. Sometimes when I've had a long day and then at night time, I just want the boys to go to bed and just start sleeping, almost like press a button and they're gone. But when they don't do that and you start getting irritated at what's going on, your sense of irritability is so heightened, it's a symptom of hurry sickness. Or hypersensitivity, when just a minor comment will hurt your feelings. Just a grumpy email will trigger your alarm and things like that. Or when you're restless. And for crying out loud, even our kids are restless these days. They just can't help it. And where is that coming from? They're picking it from us, the parents. When you actually do try to slow down and rest, you discover that you can't relax. You need another few more episodes of that Netflix show. You need another round of, watching the highlights of the latest Champions League or Europa League or whatever. And then for some, it's workaholism. You just can't stop working. You leave the office, you come home, you continue from where you stopped. You just don't know when to stop. Another few minutes, another hour, another day. Before you know it, it's almost like an addiction. For some, it's emotional numbness. They don't have the capacity to feel the pain of other people. You hear news happening all around, and it's just news. That's just Libya. That's just Morocco. That's just Ethiopia. It's far away over there in Pakistan. But these are human beings. These are real people. And when you get to that point of emotional numbness, it's actually a sign of hurry sickness. Or when your order of priority is out of whack, is out of sync, or when you lack caring for your body, when you always resort to escapism, and my wife is quick to point this out when I do it, when you're too tired to do what's actually life-giving for your soul, or when there is slippage of spiritual disciplines, the things that are spiritual habits that are supposed to keep you plugged into God, they are gone. They are just gone. And it doesn't happen like that. It happens gradually. When, I mean, for me, what that looks like at this current season of my life is the fact that I'm like, I don't know, 5 days behind in my daily Bible reading. And so, in fact, there was a time I was like almost 2 weeks behind. Not that I wasn't engaging with the scriptures, but the portion that I've systematically assigned to want to cover every single day, I found out that I woke up one day and I was 2 weeks behind. That did not happen one day. It happened over 2 weeks of repeated neglect. And these are 2 weeks of super busyness in which I could say I did a lot of things for God. But the spiritual disciplines that are supposed to plug me into the life that I'm living, as it were, animated by the life of God, I'm beginning to lose touch with them. And then the last one, isolation. When you feel disconnected from God, when you feel disconnected from others, when you feel disconnected from your soul. Those are 10 symptoms. And I don't know how many of those that you can relate with out of the 10. You have your report card to show for it. So there is a problem here, which then brings us to the solution. And the first thing the author does is to tell us what the solution is not. The solution is not more time. Because when you think of all this, the usual or the possible thing to think about is, okay, if I could just get some few more hours in a day, if I could just maybe stop doing XYZ and have some more hours to squeeze into this and that. Well, it's not necessarily that. The solution to an overbusy life is not more time. It is to slow down and simplify our lives around what really matters. I think that part needs to be said again and again and again and again. The solution to an overbusy life is not more time. It's to slow down and simplify our lives around what really matters. And that's what the rest of the book will go on to unpack. Of course, the first of all tries to help us see some of the limitations that we have that makes it important and necessary for us to actually figure out what is it that really matters and how can I simplify my life around those things that really matters. And then, of course, the other part of that is then to introduce us to how Jesus does it. How Jesus does it. The fact that he was hardly ever in a hurry. And one way to think of this is to think of it through, this framework of becoming an apprentice under Jesus. In other words, discipleship. That's what discipleship is all about, becoming an apprentice under Jesus. And what will an apprentice under Jesus do? He wants to be with Jesus. He wants to become like Jesus. And he wants to do the things that Jesus would do if Jesus were to be in his shoes or our shoes. As simple as that. Be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus would do if he were you. And that's what the author begins to try to nail down in a very practical sense. And by the time you begin to boil it down, what you would see is that this is a rule of life. This is an awakening of, a new culture, a new way of living. And if there's anything you can pick from reading the 4 Gospels, the 4 accounts about the life of Jesus, it's the fact that he was really ever in a hurry. Really ever in a hurry. I like very many of the examples that the author zoomed into here. For instance, when Lazarus was sick, and of course, I mean, someone is sick. They sent a message to Jesus. And what do we hear? The Bible says, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. He was not in a hurry, despite the fact that his friend's life was hanging in the balance. There was this other story about Jairus coming to say, you know, my daughter is sick, come and pray for her. And of course, on the way to going to pray for Jairus's daughter, who was at the point of death, there was the woman with the issue of blood. And Jesus gave his full attention to that woman. He was fully present, despite the fact that there is this other 12-year-old girl that was born perhaps at the same time that this woman's issue started, because we were told she's been having this blood bleeding for 12 years. And Jesus stayed with her. And I like how in one of the translations, and one of the gospel accounts where this story was narrated, it was actually said that, you know, she told him all the story. And when a woman tells you the full story, you know that you're going to be there for a long time. And Jesus was there, fully present. Of course, he will go on eventually to still heal Jairus' daughter. But while he was with this woman, he was there. He was hardly ever in a hurry. Hardly ever in a hurry. And so what does it mean to follow Jesus? It's to live the way Jesus lived. It's to take his life and teachings as our template, our model, our pattern, and begin to live that out. And that's what the third part of this book is going to do. It's going to introduce us to 4 practices for honoring your life. And that's the part that another reviewer would take. So that's this where I leave us. But to maybe reaffirm the point that we are saying, to reaffirm the point of this book, the central message, if Satan cannot get you to sin, he'll get you busy. And it won't happen, you know, like you don't fall into busyness. You slide into it. And for the most part, it feels good. Being busy can feel good. It can be addictive. It can indict or induce some dopamine. It can be pleasurable because you feel like you're feeling fulfilled. You're getting stuff done. You're making impact. People are reeling about, you know, what God is using you for. But what really matters? At the end of the day, when you stand before God as an individual who will be accountable to God as an individual, it won't be about all those, you know, I did this, I did that, it will be first and foremost, were you with me? How was the quality of your being with Jesus? How was the quality of your becoming like Jesus? How was the quality of your living the life that Jesus would have lived if he was in your shoes? So this is a book that honestly, no matter how well you think you get it the first time, you go back and then it's like coming again. It's like coming again. And I trust that the Lord will help us to identify this problem in our lives and begin to embrace the wisdom that the solution presents, especially in the final part where these 4 practices would be unveiled on how to unhurry your life.